Well, the British royals have posed for a new formal photograph. You notice there she's the only splash of color in this picture, but take a close look at her tiara.
Just 4 minutes ago, the council doors opened and everything blew up. The British monarchy is officially not the same anymore. The council just stripped Camilla's title and passed it right off to Kate. And trust me, that was just the beginning. Right. As they wrapped up reading the statement, Camilla grabbed the back of a chair, lost her balance, and collapsed right then and there, in front of the very people who just stripped her status after she spent decades grinding for it. Before we get into the real dirt on what this means for the family, make sure you smash that subscribe button so you're always in the loop. Camilla was lying flat on the ground while the secretary kept right on reading, like nothing happened. The whole room full of high-ups just sat there frozen after weeks of everyone walking on eggshells. Look, the Royal Council is this inner circle that makes the big calls behind closed doors, and whatever they say goes. By taking her title away, they stripped all her perks, her clout, and her daily duties. It all went to Kate in an instant. Camilla held it together right up until Kate's name dropped. That's when you could see her break. Kate wasn't just getting a promotion. She was taking the exact spot Camilla spent 30 years fighting tooth and nail for while the public hated her and nobody trusted her. Charles saw his wife fall apart, but he stayed quiet. The last sentence knocked the wind out of the room. Camilla grabbed a chair and mumbled, "This can't be happening." Her legs gave out before anyone could speak up. Charles jumped up, but then he froze right in his tracks, caught between saving his wife and playing the king. William stepped in first, shouting for medics while staff grabbed her off the floor. William looked at his dad and saw a man who was completely broken. Kate was totally out of the loop. They kept her away on purpose so no one could say she pulled the strings behind the scenes. But it also meant she was about to get blindsided by the news of a lifetime. There was a secret appendix attached to the paper, basically extra legal fine print, that put strict limits on Camilla's staff, where she lives, and what she can do. Only 3 people saw it. William looked at the signature line, and the spot for Charles's name was empty. The king hadn't signed off. Was it low-key resistance? Or was he trying to shield her? That was the big question everyone was terrified to ask. Look, to understand how one woman ended up on the floor while the other got handed the keys to the kingdom, you've got to understand what both of them stood to lose. Sure, Camilla and Kate stood side by side on the balconies and waved at the same big events. But behind the scenes, they were total night and day for the future of the firm. Camilla spent decades dragging herself through the mud just to be accepted, while Kate basically won everyone over by playing it cool, patient, and completely low-key. Now one vote changed all of that, and the relationship is pretty much burned to the ground. Deep down, Camilla always felt on edge about her title. She went through hell with the press, dealt with endless side eyes from the family, and always worried she was just a placeholder. Every appearance, every gig, every time she stepped out on Charles's arm was a personal victory. It proved she survived. So having her title yanked away wasn't just royal paperwork to her. It felt like the palace was admitting she was a temporary fix all along. Kate took a completely different route. She built her reputation slowly, doing the work, keeping her head down and staying out of trouble. She never made big demands. She just let her reputation build itself by being reliable day in and day out. William watched her gain real respect over the years, not by playing politics, but by being a solid partner while they prepped for the top job. Kate set the council letter down on her lap and just stared at that last paragraph. William was close enough to see the total shock on her face, but he kept quiet and let her process it. "I never asked to take anything from her," she whispered. William said he knew. He knew his wife felt the sick irony of getting handed all this power, while Camilla was literally collapsing from losing hers. Kate stared back at the document, trying to balance her duty against a huge hit of guilt. Camilla spent 30 years clawing for a title that got erased before lunch. Kate spent those same years playing it super safe, so no one would think she was power-hungry. But the council shoved both of them right into the splash zone anyway. William finally admitted the truth. This whole handoff wasn't a promotion or a pat on the back. Council insiders told him off the record that it was done to head off a complete internal meltdown. A constitutional crisis means the whole system is about to go off the rails and wreck the family's authority for good. This wasn't just two women clashing anymore. Years ago, Charles was caught on tape promising Camilla he'd always protect her position now. He was stuck picking between a promise to his wife and his sacred oath to keep the monarchy standing. Kate looked William in the eye and asked what could possibly be crazy enough to force his dad to go back on his word. William hesitated before opening his mouth. Look, the title was yanked in one day, but the fuse was lit weeks ago at a party where things crossed the line. It didn't start with lawyers or headline news. It started in a crowded room full of high society guests, when Camilla quietly went behind Kate's back and reversed one of her decisions. Almost nobody in the room picked up on it, but William saw it happen live and heard what got said right after. Charles watched his wife ignore a low-key warning, and that was the exact second the palace's dirty laundry couldn't be hidden anymore. Charles was scaling back his public schedule, which forced everyone to figure out who was going to take over the heavy lifting. Kate got assigned a huge chunk of new duties because, let's be real, she and William are the future of the crown. But Camilla still called the shots on the internal paperwork, the actual administrative channels controlling schedules, guest lists, and official orders. That gave her way more leverage than anyone on the outside realized. The whole thing blew up during a rehearsal for an investiture ceremony at Windsor. The king had personally signed off on a plan that put Kate first in line to receive guests. Camilla took one look at the paper, stopped, and ordered an aide to wipe Kate's name off and replace it with her own. William saw the changed list right before things kicked off. He tracked Camilla down in a quiet hallway and calmly asked why his father's order got tampered with. She didn't back down for a second. She looked him right in the face and told him Kate needed to figure out the difference between being popular and having real status. William didn't blow his top, but that comment hit hard. It showed just how terrified Camilla really was of losing her grip. Princess Anne caught enough of the argument to know it was a massive deal. She got Charles alone later and told him straight up, this isn't just petty palace drama anymore. Reports from that conversation show Anne warned him that Camilla was openly defying the monarchy's future. The king gave Kate that assignment himself, and overriding it was a slap in the face to his leadership and William's legacy. A senior aide came in and dropped 3 previous directives right on the king's desk. Every single paper left his office saying one thing, but arrived at the staff saying another. The writing was on the wall. Camilla didn't just lose her temper once. She was actively using her grip on palace paperwork to edit approved decisions on the down low. Charles summoned her that night. William waited in the hall, thinking she'd back down or apologize. Instead, you could hear shouting through the door. A door slammed and Charles walked out with a shocker. He was handing the whole mess over to the council. What began as petty drama over a seating chart was about to spark the biggest blow-up of Charles's entire reign. No media, no press managers, no pre-written spin when Charles finally confronted Camilla. Only William and Anne were allowed in the room. The king put the tampered papers on the table and asked point blank, "Did you deliberately overrule me?" Camilla didn't backpedal at all. Instead, she pointed the finger right at William, accusing him of using his dad's lighter schedule to set up a rival court. What came out of her mouth next pretty much blew up any remaining hope for happy family dynamics. Charles picked his private library because he was desperate to keep this in the family before the full council stepped in. The doctored papers were irrefutable proof that someone was messing with his orders. Official rank and royal duties come straight from the sovereign. Going behind his back to rewrite them broke both his trust and the whole chain of command. Camilla went after William, saying Kate's expanded workload was no accident. She claimed he was building a clique around his wife and sidelining the older generation while Charles was taking time off. William stood his ground and told her straight up, "No one made you rewrite my father's orders. This isn't a popularity contest. It's about basic loyalty to the king." Camilla looked at Charles, fully expecting him to take her side. Instead, Charles asked for an apology and demanded she hand over the key administrative channels she used to manage top staff. The king didn't even yell. But the move was brutal. Losing those channels meant stripping away the exact leverage keeping her relevant in the palace. Camilla wasn't having it. She told him point blank that surrendering would make her completely powerless in her own marriage, leaving her defenseless against all the people who've been waiting decades to watch her crash and burn. You could hear her voice shaking as she threw his old promises right back in his face, the ones he made long before he ever became king. That's when Princess Anne finally had enough. According to internal reports, Anne revealed she had already requested a full-blown institutional review. Turns out, several high-level staffers confessed they were scared to death of payback from Camilla's team if they didn't follow her orders. This wasn't just a messy family argument anymore. It was a total breakdown of the system. The key players inside the palace completely lost faith in how things were being run. A chair screeched against the floor as Camilla jumped up. She looked Charles in the eye and warned him that letting this review happen would tear down everything he ever swore to uphold. Then she stormed out and slammed the door shut. Charles stayed glued to the spot. After a brutal silence, he asked if the council really had the power to strip her title without his permission. The real answer had nothing to do with personal feelings or keeping the peace at home. It came down to the cold, hard realities of constitutional law. Camilla assumed Charles was the only one who held the keys to her future. Big mistake. Behind the scenes, a group of constitutional lawyers, advisors, and high-ranking family members were calling the shots to protect the crown. They didn't care about the feud with Kate anymore. They cared that someone was secretly undermining the king's authority. By the time Charles stepped into the room, the final paperwork was already printed, proofread, and laid out right beside an open pen. Charles paused at the table and read that first page without making a sound. The council had gone over everything with a fine-tooth comb: titles, internal perks, security clearances, and event rankings. The bottom line was cold as ice. They needed to decide if letting Camilla keep her status was still worth it, or if it was starting to wreck the firm. William and Anne were sitting off to the side. They had a ton of pull, but they couldn't call all the shots. William mattered because he and Kate are the future of the family. Anne mattered because she's been grinding for decades, and everybody respects her. But neither one of them had the power to yank Camilla's title solo. That took a full council vote and Charles putting ink on the paper as he reached the end. Charles pulled off his glasses and looked right at Anne. He practically whispered that putting his name on this felt like admitting to the world that his marriage failed. He spent 30 years taking bullets for Camilla. Now, a single signature was about to turn all of that into a massive public embarrassment. Anne didn't sugarcoat a thing. Council logs show she told him point blank, protecting Camilla's feelings isn't worth throwing Kate to the wolves, scaring the staff, or risking the future of the crown. She didn't say it to be mean. She said it because it was true, and that made it hit twice as hard. Then William cracked open the sealed appendix, the extra legal file stuffed with receipts. The papers showed that Camilla's inner circle was deliberately holding back crucial updates meant for Kate, so she'd be left in the dark or catch the news too late. William slapped one of those buried files right down on his dad's desk. Official transcripts show the file was for a massive state ceremony where Kate almost got thrown to the wolves completely unprepared in front of world leaders. Kate's entire public image was almost ruined by a backroom play she didn't even know was happening. You could hear a pin drop in that room. Charles finally got it. This wasn't just two royals clashing over seating charts. It was a complete breakdown of his authority. The council voted that the title had to go to Kate, but Charles asked for 24 hours. He wanted to give Camilla a chance to resign quietly, save face, and hold on to some of her status. That last night was her shot at a clean exit. But before the sun even came up, Camilla made a move that sealed her fate. Charles went into Camilla's quarters with the only deal left on the table. She could step down on her own terms, keep some minor honors, and let PR frame it as a soft retirement. But Camilla wasn't having it. To her, giving up meant losing everything. Before dawn, she sent back a hard no in writing. A few hours later, the council made the order final and enforceable, and her world crumbled right beneath her feet. Charles put the official exit terms right in front of her, showing what she could still salvage: a toned-down public role, a skeleton crew of staff, and a chance to exit next to him without a public war. A negotiated deal meant leaving with her head held high instead of getting dragged out. It was the last safety net Charles had left before the council took complete control. Camilla went over every word while he stood there without saying a thing. She saw right through it. The offer kept up appearances for the press, but totally wiped out her power behind closed doors. Accepting it meant owning up to the fact that 30 years of work was down the drain. She looked Charles in the eye and asked if he seriously expected her to sign away the life he vowed to defend. Charles hesitated. He couldn't play dumb about the doctored papers or delayed updates anymore. But he still wanted to keep her from getting publicly dragged. He told her straight up, if she said no, the council was going to execute a full, uncompromising wipeout. The fine print was brutal. Her staff, her office space, her clearances, and her daily duties would be yanked away on the spot. Camilla held off until he left the room. Then she tore the unsigned paper right down the middle and told her secretary that signing it was like erasing her own existence. The secretary said her voice didn't crack once, even though her hands were trembling like crazy. She was not going quietly into the night. Charles spent the rest of the night on the other side of the palace. He sat by himself next to the torn contract, completely gutted that his last attempt to give her a soft landing bombed. He did his job as king, but it felt like a total defeat. As soon as the sun came up, the takeover was triggered. Camilla's team got official notices that their jobs, desks, and duties were being handed over to Kate's office by lunchtime. A top aide walked into the council chamber, grabbed the fancy folder with Camilla's name on it, and replaced it with Kate's. Neither woman was there to watch it happen, but that quick silent swap made it official. Camilla was out, and Kate was in. Camilla finally came to after passing out, but she gave Charles the complete silent treatment. She had only one demand, a sit-down, just her and the woman taking her spot. For the first time since the drama went down, Camilla and Kate were in the same room without Charles, William PR reps, or the council buffering them. Everyone in the palace was bracing for an explosion when Camilla walked into Kate's private living room. They expected screaming, finger-pointing, or a desperate attempt to fight the decision. But instead, the two of them just sat there face-to-face. No aides, no scripts, no filters. Camilla looked totally wiped out, and Kate was deeply rattled. Right on the table between them was the paper that stripped one woman of her status and gave it straight to the other. That's when Camilla asked the one question Kate was terrified to hear. "Did you know?" Kate took the meeting even though William warned her, "Look, she's going to try to make you feel guilty so you refuse the promotion." William had to remind her that this wasn't up for debate anymore. The role controls the whole formal hierarchy at royal events and runs the internal machinery Camilla used to oversee. Saying no meant dragging the whole palace right back into a disaster zone. Kate met her gaze and answered without flinching. She didn't know the council was going to pull the trigger that morning, and she never wanted Camilla out. She admitted that reading the order freaked her out. She wasn't celebrating, she knew how huge the job was, but she also felt the brutal toll it took on the woman sitting across from her. Camilla just sat there and listened, and you could see her wall finally start to crumble. According to private notes taken after they talked, Camilla admitted the cold, hard truth: Kate's popularity scared the hell out of her. She watched everyone fall in love with Kate, and it triggered her biggest fear: getting pushed into the background before Charles even got settled on the throne. That insecurity drove her to go behind people's backs, mess with schedules, and treat every good thing that happened to Kate like a threat to her own existence. That's when the whole vibe in the room changed. Kate didn't give her a free pass, but she stopped seeing a monster and started seeing a deeply insecure woman who lost her mind trying to stay in control. Kate then dropped a shocker. She almost rejected the promotion. But William pulled her aside and said, "If you say no, this whole war starts all over again and the council looks useless." Kate got it then. Taking the title wasn't about dunking on Camilla, it was about putting out a fire before it burned the house down. Camilla placed her hand on the contract and slid it right over to Kate. She looked at her and said, "Learn from my mistakes. Never confuse a shiny title with real peace of mind. Titles get you into rooms and make people bow, but they won't stop you from being scared." Kate took the document and promised her first public appearance wouldn't be a celebration. It would be a quiet recognition of the messy human cost behind the drama. When the gates opened and the news hit the press, it was all on Kate. Her next move would determine if the public saw this as a brutal punishment, a ruthless power grab, or just something the palace had to do to survive. By afternoon, news of the decree leaked out, and the whole country lost its mind. TV channels dropped everything for breaking news, and huge crowds packed the gates outside Buckingham Palace. But the one photo that blew up everywhere wasn't Camilla collapsing or the council's secret paper. It was Kate stepping out of a car without even a hint of a smile. No flashy jewels, holding just one handwritten note. Right then and there, the public got it. This wasn't a win to celebrate, it was a brutal passing of the torch. The palace dropped a formal bulletin confirming Camilla's title, and big duties were transferred right over to Kate. The statement made the swap official, but swept all the drama under the rug. Zero mention of doctored papers, held back files, or scared staffers. The public went completely at it. Some pundits called it a long overdue lesson for abusing her power. Others blasted it as a cheap public takedown of the king's wife. Because the palace kept the real receipts hidden, the media went crazy trying to connect the dots. Charles went completely into hiding. He already had to watch his wife lose her status and pass out cold. Now he had to watch news hosts pick apart his personal life 24/7 for ratings. Private notes show he begged his team to turn off the screens. Just sitting there in total darkness while news crews yelled outside his window. Kate sat inside the car watching the circus outside. She looked over at William and swore she wouldn't let people think she was rubbing Camilla's nose in it. She took off a massive royal brooch and put it away before opening her door. William got it instantly. She was stepping up to do the work, but she wasn't taking a victory lap. Outside the palace, newspaper guys were holding up the evening paper. Massive headlines read, "The crown changes hands." Right under it was a crazy split photo. Camilla sneaking out a quiet side exit, while Kate walked right up the main steps. That one cover said it all. One woman running away from power, and another stepping in to take over. Unfolding her note, Kate gave a shout-out to Camilla's years of work, then promised to keep things stable, dutiful, and respectful. No victory lap, zero celebration over her new rank. Inside the palace, Charles prepped for one final showdown with his wife. The whole country watched the title shift. But only Charles could decide if there was anything left of their marriage, their trust, or their life together. By the time Charles stepped into Camilla's suite, the council's decision was totally locked in. Her official seal was yanked. Her administrative binders were purged from the room. Kate's name was on the desk Camilla spent 30 years fighting to sit at. But Charles wasn't there to talk shop. He came to see what remained after paranoia, power plays, and backstabbing stripped everything else away. This conversation was going to answer the ultimate question. Was this just the end of her job, or the end of their relationship? Charles sat across from her and set his hand on the table with his wedding ring front and center. That small gesture meant more than any official document ever could. Losing that seal meant she couldn't sign off on a single royal order ever again. It was game over, but the king wanted to sit there as a husband one last time before dropping the gavel as sovereign. Camilla just looked at him, waiting for the verdict. Charles told her straight up, he still loved her, but love couldn't excuse actions that messed with his control. He didn't even sound mad, and honestly that quiet calm made it hurt way worse. He stuck by her through 30 years of public hate, but he couldn't turn a blind eye to changed orders, intercepted notes, or the toxic vibe pushed onto palace staff. Camilla finally threw in the towel. According to private records of their chat, she confessed that everything she did came from pure paranoia. Kate's popularity made her feel like she was being replaced. William taking on more power made her feel her time was up. Even Charles taking a light schedule felt like the life she fought so hard to build was slipping through her fingers. Charles sat there and let her speak, but he didn't budge. He told her their marriage wasn't over, but her days as a power player were done. She was stepping down from big decisions, giving up access to official channels and retiring to a quiet life by his side. Kate officially accepted the new title, framing it as pure duty, not a victory lap. Right alongside that move, the council rewired the whole system so no secondary office could ever go behind the king's or William's back again. That fix was critical. The monarchy can handle personal beef, but only if its official orders stay bulletproof. Before nightfall, a handwritten note from Kate landed on Camilla's desk. Kate promised she'd use the role to bring the family together, not to wipe away Camilla's years of hard work. The letter didn't cure the heartbreak, but it gave her a bit of dignity back. Camilla lost the title she thought was her ultimate shield. Kate inherited a massive burden she never wanted, and Charles got a brutal reality check that keeping the crown intact means letting the person you love face the music. Nobody at the palace was popping champagne. They just kept moving, scarred, reorganized, and totally sure about who was running the show from here on out.